After an incredible 2 weeks of action through March Madness, it is time to look ahead to the Final Four and Championship Monday. Alongside Tony Farmer, I'm Joe Fortenbaugh. We are here for OddsShark. Wow is really all I can say to start this, Tony. Wow. No number one seeds make it to the Elite Eight for the first time in history. We've got no 2 seeds in the Final Four. We've got no 3 seeds in the Final Four. A lot of people are saying that this could be the result of name, image, likeness, NIL, the universities and their ability to now pay players to come join their programs. That's how Miami beefed up a little bit, more on them in the future. But I mean, is this how it's going to be moving forward? Are we going to be treated to this level of carnage every single year because of NIL?
I sure hope so, Joe. You got the transfer portal, which is active as well, and that may be a factor too. I want that to be the case. I think we all do as fans and as bettors, right? The NFL has gotten a lot better since they instituted the salary cap and some other things to add parity. I'm pretty sure we all, maybe besides 4 or 5 schools, want a lot more parity in college football. And if we can be treated to this kind of parity for the next decade or two, I am all for it.
I would love it. You'd see a lot of us playing more futures tickets on long shots and mid-range shots because what we've got so far this year is fantastic. One thing to keep in mind, though, maybe prisoners of recency bias here. I mean, name, image, likeness, it did exist last year, and that was a Final Four that featured a 1 seed, 2 seeds, and an 8 seed in North Carolina. So something to keep in mind moving forward. Now, to the participants in this year's Final Four. At any point this season, there were moments where you could have made a killing betting these teams based on how high their futures has gotten. UConn at one point was 90-1 despite the blazing start they had to the season. Miami was 150-1. San Diego State was 80-1 at one point this season. Florida Atlantic 300-1. I mean, for the future, moving forward, like I said, we might be playing more mid-range and long-range tickets because these teams, no one saw them coming.
Yeah, and Joe, there's some books out there that will let you parlay them together to have an exact matchup, right? Whoa. In the finals. The odds are just astronomical. So, yeah, when you have a 300-1 and a 150-1 in the mix, it sure does make watching basketball a lot of fun, that's for sure.
We'll get into the futures prices in just a moment, but I wanted to isolate something the team at OddsShark had thrown our way earlier this morning. If you take all the teams that Miami beat in this tournament, the 4 teams, and you add up each of their seedings, the number comes out to 19. That's the lowest seeding total for a Final Four team since 1985, meaning they're beating up on really good opposition. You could have a 1 seed that beats a 16, right? And then in the next round, you beat an 8. That's 16 plus 8. That's already 24. Miami's beaten 4 teams that add up to 19. Again, the lowest total for a Final Four team since 1985. What do you make of the Hurricanes? Because I thought Drake was going to beat him in the opening round. They've basically proven me wrong the whole way.
Yeah, I think I was on Drake in that opening round as well. Even for me, someone who's not a big seeding guy, I look a lot more at the analytics than I do the seeds. Yeah. It's still been an impressive path. I mean, they're battle tested. They're going to have their work cut out for them against UConn as 5.5-point dogs this weekend. But I think their defense is playing a lot better since the tournament started. And so they've got as good of a chance as anybody. And yeah, put some respect on their name for the path that got them to the Final Four.
In terms of some betting trends that we've seen so far, unders were very popular early in the dance. Then overs had their day. Credit to you. You called that last week when you and I were talking last Tuesday. You sat there and you said, we've had such a crazy under run. There might be value in the overs. And then boom, that's exactly what ended up happening. San Diego State, however, 12 straight unders, 6 straight point spread covers. We'll be getting into their matchup with FAU in a moment. But let's take a look at the futures market. Heading into the Final Four, UConn is your odds-on favorite. No surprise. They've hammered everybody. They're minus 125. San Diego State 4-1. Miami plus 450. Florida Atlantic in the neighborhood of plus 650. How would you approach the futures market heading into Final Four weekend? Do any of these prices catch your eye? Would you consider the idea of a moneyline rollover parlay? What would you advise our listeners?
I think San Diego State at that plus 400 price is worth it. I mean, there's some good value there. I honestly think they're probably the only team that has a good chance at beating UConn. Like if I'm UConn, that's the team that scares me the most because of that elite defense. I think if you're going to beat UConn, you got to slow them down with an elite defense. And I don't want to say get lucky on offense, but you got to hit some shots on offense, and that's going to be the formula to beat UConn. I think San Diego State's the only one with the defense that can necessarily have a good chance against it. So give me plus 400 with a little sprinkle, and I'm feeling okay about that.
The money line rollover parlay is an interesting tactic. You talk about it every year in a conference tournament time and then before March Madness starts. I was running through some permutations. If you take a team like Florida Atlantic, right now they're what? They're right around plus 110 on the money line. So say it's a $100 wager, you win, you now have $210 in profit. You roll that over, 210 total, your original investment plus the 110 you just made. So 210 in total. You roll it over in the championship should they win. I mean, let's say they're a 6-point dog to UConn, for example, right? You convert that to a probability. I'm not going to bore everyone, but that would really only end up paying around plus 450, plus 475. If they're maybe a 9 or a 10-point dog, then it gets worth it. So I think the books see this coming. A team like Florida Atlantic, you might be better off just taking the futures price at plus 650 because, again, if Miami beats UConn, suddenly that changes the equation as well. Would you agree?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we talked about it in our first episode, was it 2 weeks ago, how sometimes these money line rollovers can be profitable. And I think this is a situation where, yeah, absolutely, hit that money line rollover at this point on them for sure. The UConn price is interesting, though, Joe. I mean, sometimes you see prices like this and you don't want to take that favorite, right? Because it's more fun, it's more profitable. But is there value on UConn after watching them destroy everybody? I mean, they beat Gonzaga by almost 30 points. I said going into that game that those might be the two best teams in the country. And then UConn beat them by 30. So I don't know that anybody would be surprised and shocked to see UConn just destroy their next two opponents. I don't want that. I want to see some better basketball, but they're just on a roll right now. So it's tough to not bet on them as well.
They're holding the opposition to an average of 59 points per game. They've blown everybody out. They've been absolutely electric in the second half of every single game. And at every turn, we've had this conversation, right? They were 15-1 before the dance. Then they cruise through opening weekend. Prices are readjusted. Well, should we consider them to still win the region? Have we lost the value? I don't think so. I think minus 125 is okay here. You're a big favorite over Miami. If you handle your business, you're going to be a big favorite in the final. I don't think that's a bad price to pay if you want to get involved in minus 125. Any advice for viewers who might have some futures tickets coming into this weekend in terms of hedging? A lot of times people say let it ride unless it's life-changing money, stuff like that. Any hedging advice for anybody out there? How would you play some of this?
Yeah, I'm actually going to have an article on oddshark.com specifically about different hedging strategies. And I think you need to ask yourself a couple questions. One, what's your level of conviction going into that game? Two, how much does X mean to you and how much does Y mean to you? Meaning X as your original bet or Y about what it's going to pay off. Like you said, if this is life-changing money at this point for you, maybe be more conservative and secure a big chunk of that life-changing money and be more aggressive with your hedge. But one thing that I think is important to talk about is kind of what I refer to as a middle hedge strategy. Like if you have San Diego State and you have UConn and you want to hedge on the dogs, you can hedge with plus points. So for instance, Miami plus 5.5, right? And then you can hit that middle. If UConn wins by 1 through 5, then your original bet, your original futures bet hits, and then your hedge hits as well. And that's a pretty sweet spot to be. You could even consider, how about this? How about if you got the UConn futures ticket, how about buying it up to plus 6? And then you'd push on plus 6 on your hedge, and then only a 7-point or more victory would really hurt you at that point. So obviously the bonus with these underdogs to hedging on the money line is you don't have to lay as much money because you're getting plus odds on the money line. But there's something to be said for hitting that middle. And when it works out that way, Joe, those are pretty sweet to hit those middles.
Yeah, without question. I think it's important to bring that up because a lot of people feel that a hedge is just traditionally a money line play, which it could be. You have to invest less money if you're betting on the dog there in the hedge, and then the payout ends up giving you a better variety of how much you're going to walk away with. But you eliminate the idea of the trap, which is what you're talking about. If you're a 6-point dog, go ahead and play it on the points, and then you could end up hitting both. So it's important to understand that you have options here. Go ahead and play what you think is best for you. So let's move to the Final Four. First game, Saturday, 6:09 p.m. Eastern, San Diego State laying 2, total of 132, very cheap. San Diego State took some early money here. They opened around 1.5. I saw it get up to 2.5. Now it's sitting 2. Side total, any approach here? I mean, the under's hitting 12 straight San Diego State games.
Yeah, and we saw the under dip down by about a half point too. That could be an indication that some sharp guys who traditionally bet earlier in the week like the under here as well. So that's certainly worth considering. We got a couple days to watch this market fluctuate. It's going to be interesting to see it. I've got a small bet on FAU as I handicap this game. I just feel like it's about a 50-50. So if you're going to give me plus money, it's not much. I think I got it at plus 118 or something. I'll go ahead and put a small bet on FAU here.
I have a lean to San Diego State. I haven't done much with this one. I worry about the under trend. Obviously, it's been fantastic for San Diego State games. FAU getting a week to prepare for this. San Diego State getting a week to prepare. It being the Final Four. Teams hitting the double bonus early. Lots of fouling late in the game. San Diego State does an amazing job of just grinding down the tempo in these games, defending the three-point line. Florida Atlantic, they live in the mid-range. They've been very good there this year, so maybe they're able to get something going. So for me right now, it's a lean to San Diego State. It's a lean to the under. I haven't gotten heavily invested in either. The next game I've definitely been more aggressive with. This is the one a lot of people are paying attention to because of what UConn's done so far. This is Saturday as well, 8:49 p.m. Eastern. UConn laying 5.5, total of 149.5. So a completely different version of a total for this game rather than the first game. UConn took some money. They opened as a 5-point favorite. They've been bumped up. How much higher do you see this going? How would you attack the side and the total?
Yeah, so I've got a small bet in on the UConn money line and a small bet in on UConn minus 5.5. I wouldn't be surprised if it went up to 6. I don't think it's going to go much higher than that. Wouldn't be shocked if it did. I think worth a consideration, though, if you like Miami, do you take Miami in the first half? Knowing that even in these games that UConn has blown people out, they aren't necessarily blowing them out in the first half. A lot of times they really start to pull away in the second half. So that's worth considering if you like Miami in this game.
I've been blindly betting, and I did this for the second weekend, not the first weekend, but the UConn second half price in their games pre-flop, right? So there's some risk there. There could always be an injury. You could be up huge and then you throttle back. But I did it with the Gonzaga game. It was minus 2.5 for the second half. And they went out there and they hammered them in the first half, so I thought I was in trouble. And they still won the second half by like 6 points. They have been that good in the second half. So live betting is an interesting strategy. You're going to want to keep an eye on that because, Tony, you're right. If this game's tight early, I think a lot of people would be lining up on UConn to close it out in the second half. Miami's been very good. I talked to some people yesterday who are thinking about Miami. They think it could close 6.5. Public's going to be all over UConn. I had jumped on UConn at 5. I love everything this team brings to the table. You and I have talked about it over the last 2 weeks. They're one of only 4 teams that's coming into the dance top 20 in both offensive and defensive efficiency. They're extremely well balanced. And this coaching staff under Coach Hurley, they hadn't won a tournament game since they got to UConn. And now that they've got their monkey off the back, it feels like they're just playing loose, aggressive, confident basketball, as if nobody's an obstacle to them. So laying the 5 there is something I'm considering. I'm also looking to the under. I think a lot of people feel this is going to be a high-scoring game. I think UConn is going to give Miami trouble out on the perimeter, and they're going to drag them down in transition a little bit. Although, full disclosure, I said that about Miami in their last game, and they ended up proving me wrong there as well. One of the final questions I have for you. Let's say Miami wins this game. How big of a favorite, if at all, do you see them in the final? Would we now shift our perception to Miami's a juggernaut because they took out the juggernaut? How do you see the championship lines and the finals moving up?
Yeah, that's a really tough one. I put a lot of thought into this, and I would say maybe Miami a 1-point favorite, 1.5, something like that. They might kind of become the darling, the David taking out the Goliath, because there's rightfully so. There's so much hype on UConn right now. So I think people will start putting those pieces together, as you and I talked about earlier. Wow, they've actually started to, they've actually beat a lot of really good teams on their way here, and they'll get that respect. And I could see, I'm not sure where the book's going to open it up, but I could see the public being all over Miami and pushing it to, Miami as a 1-point favorite by tip-off.
See, that's the thing. I think that's the most surprising of the 4 potential outcomes or 4 potential winners is Miami taking out UConn. So I think with Florida Atlantic and San Diego State, you have a very tight point spread. 2 teams no one predicted to be here. Either one winning isn't going to be a massive surprise. San Diego State winning is the favorite. Nobody's shocked. Florida Atlantic winning. Hey, San Diego State's not some blue blood powerhouse. You go in there and win that game, it doesn't surprise anyone. But I think if Miami takes out UConn, Miami then just becomes UConn. They're the team that everybody should have been paying more attention to. Great coach in Jim Larinaga. They did a lot of good stuff with NIL to bolster up that roster, and they've been kicking everybody's butt. And I think you could see them as maybe a 5-6 point favorite in the final, just basically assuming Connecticut's role moving forward. Your tournament picks page has been fantastic. I had to make sure we brought this up. Over at Oddshark, you can follow along with all of Tony's action. The wins are obvious, and you've been doing very well. But have you learned anything through any of the losses, like any handicapping lessons, mistakes that may have been made, stuff that you can pass along that our listeners, our viewers can understand that this is things they should be paying more attention to?
Yeah, I'd say my biggest regret, Joe, is not jumping on that under train while it was still going. Those first couple rounds. I think looking back, I don't really have a good excuse why I didn't. I think I just had a blind spot, and I really should have been all over that. So there's a regret there. I started off really slow. And, we're now in the profit now. There's 42 bets total that I made throughout March Madness. And obviously, I wish I started off faster. But from an educational standpoint, there is a silver lining that I started off slow, because I really like to drive home the point to recreational bettors that professional bettors are making 3% bets roughly. And so even though we got down, we still stuck around 3% bets, scratched and clawed our way back, and I think have finished like 13-4 our last 17 bets. So I think that's the big takeaway lesson here is don't panic. Stick to your strategy, stick to your game plan. Don't say, oh my God, there's only 40 games left. I've got to make up this profit in the next 12 games. Then you're running off of emotion instead of rational and being rational thinker, and you can get yourself into trouble that way.
That's me with baseball season every year. I open in April terribly. I get my face kicked in. I'm like, I got to make this back. And it's like, got 145 games to go, pal, per team. You're going to be fine. Or you can skip it entirely and just get ready for football season. Give the mind a rest. That's an anecdote for another day. Baseball has always been my Achilles heel. He's Tony Farmer. I'm Joe Fortenbaugh. Again, you can find all of his picks. He's got the tournament page all set up over at oddshark.com. We got a lot of great stuff rolling out with upcoming UFC, Masters previews. Keep that in mind. That's right around the corner. Best of luck to all of you. Thanks for checking us out. We'll be back soon.